The air backstage was a palpable hum of anticipation, thick with the scent of polished mahogany, old programs, and the faint, sweet perfume of expensive flowers. Leo, a young man in his mid-20s, stood amidst the organized chaos, his heart a nervous drumbeat against his ribs, echoing the distant, muffled applause from the auditorium. Tonight was the annual Grand Gala of Classical Music, a prestigious event that drew luminaries and rising stars from across the globe. Leo wasn't performing. He was merely an assistant, a small cog in the grand machinery of the evening. But the sheer proximity to such musical greatness filled him with a mixture of awe and crippling, familiar self-doubt. Outside, the vibrant city lights blurred into a distant glow, its usual cacophony muted by the thick walls of the venerable concert hall, leaving only the hushed whispers and rustling silks of the elite audience. The undisputed star of the evening was Maestro Julian Thorne, a pianist of unparalleled technical brilliance and, as many whispered, equally unparalleled arrogance. His fingers, long and slender, were rumored to dance across the keys with a precision that bordered on the superhuman, his interpretations flawless if sometimes accused of lacking true warmth. Leo had idolized Thorne since he was a child, spending countless hours poring over recordings, dreaming of the day he might possess even a fraction of such mastery. Thorne represented the pinnacle, the untouchable ideal. During a brief intermission, a moment of respite from the intense performances, Leo found himself near the green room. The door was ajar, revealing Thorne inside, holding court. He was surrounded by a fawning entourage of critics, patrons, and fellow musicians, all hanging on his every perfectly articulated word. Thorne's laugh, a dry, almost cynical sound, punctuated the polite murmurs. Taking a deep, fortifying breath, Leo decided this was his moment. He clutched a small, hand-bound music book, its cover slightly worn from countless revisions, to his chest. It contained a composition he had poured his soul into over the past year, a piece he hoped might one day be worthy of a master's glance. It was his deepest vulnerability, his most profound aspiration, laid bare on paper. "Maestro Thorne," Leo began, his voice barely a whisper, a fragile thread against the backdrop of polite chatter. He felt a blush creep up his neck. "I'm a great admirer of your work. I took the liberty of bringing a small piece I composed. I would be honored if you might just glance at it." He extended the book, his hand trembling slightly. Thorne, a man in his late 50s with sharp, dismissive eyes that seemed to miss nothing yet acknowledge little, took the book. His gaze swept over Leo, a quick assessing glance that made Leo feel instantly insignificant. Thorne flipped through a few pages, his expression unchanging at first. Then slowly, a sneer began to form on his thin lips. He didn't even bother to sit down or give the music more than a cursory flick of the wrist. "Amateurish," Thorne declared, his voice cutting through the polite murmurs of his entourage like a razor. His tone was not merely critical, but utterly dismissive, dripping with contempt. He held the book up almost mockingly for his circle to see, as if displaying a child's clumsy drawing. "Such simplistic phrasing," he continued, gesturing vaguely at the notes. "Derivative harmonies, utterly uninspired. And this fingering?" He let out a short, scoffing laugh. "My dear boy, have you ever truly studied the piano? This is the work of someone who merely tinkers with the instrument, not one who understands its soul, its complexity, its demands." He let the book drop onto a nearby velvet-covered table with a soft, almost imperceptible thud, a sound that echoed like a hammer blow in Leo's ears, reverberating through his very bones. "You'll never amount to anything more than a glorified accompanist with this kind of effort. Stick to tuning pianos, perhaps, or fetching coffee. That might be more your speed." A ripple of uncomfortable yet obedient laughter spread through Thorne's circle. Some averted their eyes. Others offered pitying glances, but none intervened. Leo felt his face flush crimson, a burning sensation spreading across his cheeks. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, nails digging into his palms. The words, delivered with such casual public cruelty, pierced him deeper than any physical wound. They weren't just a critique. They were a sentence, a dismissal of his entire being, his deepest passion. He mumbled a hasty, barely audible apology, his throat tight with unshed tears, and retreated, stumbling slightly, the maestro's mocking gaze burning into his back like a brand. The grand hall, once a beacon of inspiration, a sanctuary of beauty, now felt like a vast echoing chamber of humiliation, its elegant chandeliers seeming to mock his shattered dreams, their brilliant light too bright, too revealing of his profound shame. He pushed through a heavy service door, emerging into the cool, damp night air, the city lights blurring through the sudden, blinding tears in his eyes. He walked aimlessly, the weight of Thorne's words crushing him, leaving him breathless and utterly, irrevocably broken. Chapter 2. The echoes of doubt and a quiet resolve. The maestro's words, "You'll never amount to anything," became a relentless, insidious echo in Leo's mind, a constant whisper that drowned out all other thoughts. For days, he couldn't bring himself to touch his piano. It sat in his small, slightly cluttered apartment, a silent, accusing presence in the corner, its polished keys reflecting the dull, gray light of the overcast city sky. The vibrant energy that usually pulsed through the urban landscape, the distant sirens, the rumble of traffic, the chatter from the street below, seemed to mock his internal stillness, his profound sense of defeat. He felt a heavy cloak of inadequacy settle over him, suffocating his passion, his very will to create. Food lost its taste, sleep offered no escape, only restless dreams of Thorne's sneering face. His older sister Clara, a pragmatic but deeply empathetic woman with a no-nonsense attitude, found him one evening. She let herself in with her spare key, finding him slumped on the sofa, staring blankly at the piano, a half-eaten bowl of cold cereal beside him. She didn't offer empty platitudes or dismiss his pain with easy words. Instead, she simply sat beside him, her presence a quiet, comforting anchor in his storm. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. "He's an arrogant man, Leo," she finally said softly, her voice gentle but firm, breaking the oppressive quiet. "And frankly, a bully. But his words only have power if you let them. Do you play for him, or do you play for yourself? Do you create music for his applause or for the sheer joy it brings you?" Her question, simple yet profound, cut through the haze of his despair like a ray of light. He thought of the countless hours he had spent at the keys since childhood, not for applause or recognition, but for the sheer, unadulterated joy of it, for the way music allowed him to express emotions words couldn't capture. He remembered the feeling of a melody taking shape under his fingers, a piece of his soul made tangible, a secret language shared only between him and the instrument. He remembered the pure, unburdened happiness of losing himself in the notes long before the world, or Julian Thorne, had imposed their judgments. The next morning, something shifted within him. The initial shame and crushing defeat began to recede, replaced by a quiet, simmering defiance. Thorne's mockery had, paradoxically, stripped away his illusions of external validation, forcing him to confront the true source of his love for music. He wouldn't play for Thorne's approval. He would play for himself, for the pure, unadulterated passion that had drawn him to the piano in the first place. He would reclaim his music. He began to practice again, not with the frantic desperation of someone seeking to prove a point, but with a newfound focus and intensity. He started by simply touching the keys, letting his fingers wander, rediscovering the familiar textures and sounds. Then he delved deeper into his own compositions, the very ones Thorne had dismissed. He refined them, stripping away anything that felt inauthentic, anything that might have been an attempt to mimic others. He experimented with unconventional harmonies, allowing his raw emotions, his pain, his resilience, his quiet hope, to guide his fingers rather than rigid rules. The city outside his window, with its constant hum and distant sirens, became a distant, almost comforting backdrop to his solitary journey. He practiced for hours, late into the night, the only sound in the quiet building being the gentle rise and fall of his melodies, sometimes hesitant, sometimes soaring. Each note became a brushstroke, painting a portrait of his resilience, his vulnerability, and his unwavering love for the art. The piano, once a symbol of his humiliation, slowly transformed into a sanctuary, a canvas for his true self, a place where he could rebuild, note by note, the shattered pieces of his confidence. He wasn't just playing, he was healing, growing, finding his true voice in the quiet solitude of his apartment. The gray skies outside slowly gave way to clearer days, mirroring the subtle shift within his soul. Chapter 3. A chance encounter. Months passed, marked by the steady rhythm of Leo's solitary practice and his quiet life. His dedication to his music became his anchor, his refuge. He wasn't seeking fame or a grand stage anymore. He was simply pursuing his craft with a quiet, fierce determination he hadn't known he possessed. His compositions, once hesitant and perhaps derivative, now flowed with a unique, unmistakable voice, imbued with the emotional depth of his recent struggles and his newfound self-awareness. He had taken on a part-time job at a small, independent music store, a cozy place filled with the scent of old paper and wood. He spent his days tuning pianos, arranging sheet music, and occasionally giving introductory lessons to local children, finding a quiet satisfaction in contributing to the musical community in a humble way. He found joy in the small things: a perfectly tuned string, a child's delighted giggle at a new melody, the gentle camaraderie with the store owner, an older, kindly woman named Eleanor, who appreciated his quiet passion. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves outside turned fiery shades of red and gold, a flyer caught his eye on the community board near the store's entrance. Annual Charity Gala for Local Arts, featuring emerging talent. It was a smaller, more intimate event than the Grand Gala, held in an old, beautifully restored theater in a historic part of the city, known for its intricate plasterwork and excellent acoustics. There was an open slot for a piano performance. Leo hesitated, the memory of Thorne's scorn still a faint, lingering ache in his chest. His hand instinctively went to the worn music book he always carried in his bag. The thought of performing again, of putting himself out there, brought a familiar tremor of fear. But then, he thought of Clara's words and the quiet resolve he had cultivated over the past months. This wasn't about proving anything to Thorne. It was about sharing his music, his truth, with others. He took a deep breath, filled out the application form, and submitted his name. Days before the gala, a wave of nervous excitement washed over him, mingling with a sense of profound purpose. The city was alive with the vibrant colors of autumn, the air crisp and invigorating. But Leo's focus was entirely on the upcoming performance. He meticulously prepared his chosen piece, the very composition Thorne had dismissed, now reimagined and infused with the entirety of his journey, a testament to his resilience. He practiced every nuance, every dynamic shift, every emotional beat, ensuring it communicated the story he needed to tell. Then a shocking announcement appeared in the local arts newsletter, a small, unassuming paragraph that hit Leo like a physical blow. Maestro Julian Thorne had agreed to be an honorary guest at the charity gala, a last-minute addition to lend prestige to the event. Leo's stomach clenched, a cold dread spreading through him. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of irony. His old tormentor, the man who had publicly humiliated him, would be there, sitting in the audience, perhaps ready to deliver another cutting remark, another dismissive sneer. For a moment, the old despair threatened to resurface, whispering doubts in his ear. What if he's right? What if I really am just an amateur? He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the familiar weight of his music book in his hand. No, he wouldn't let Thorne's presence define this moment. This wasn't about Thorne's judgment. This was about his music, his journey, his voice. He had found his purpose in the quiet solitude of his practice, and that purpose was unshakable. He would play, not for Thorne, but despite Thorne. He would play for himself, for the music, and for anyone in the audience who might find solace or inspiration in his story. His resolve solidified, stronger than ever. The night of the gala arrived. The old theater buzzed with a sophisticated but relaxed energy, a stark contrast to the rigid formality of the Grand Gala. The air was filled with polite conversation and the clinking of glasses. Leo, dressed simply but neatly in a dark suit, felt a tremor of fear, but beneath it a surprising, almost defiant calm. He saw Thorne in the front row, his silver hair gleaming under the stage lights, his expression one of detached amusement as he chatted idly with the event organizers. Clearly, the maestro was not expecting much from the emerging talent portion of the evening. Leo took a deep, steadying breath, his fingers flexing subconsciously. This wasn't about Thorne. This was about the music. This was about his voice. He walked towards the grand piano on stage, the weight of his journey, the countless hours of solitary practice, the sting of past humiliation, and the quiet triumph of his resilience in every single step. Chapter 4. The Unforgettable Melody. Leo approached the grand piano, the warm glow of the stage lights washing over his face. He could feel the eyes of the audience, a mix of polite curiosity and mild expectation. He saw Maestro Thorne in the front row, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips, as if already anticipating another amateurish display, another confirmation of his own superior judgment. Leo sat down, his hands hovering over the keys, taking a moment to connect with the instrument. For a fleeting second, the old humiliation, the sting of Thorne's words, threatened to resurface, a cold knot in his stomach. But he pushed it down, replacing it with the raw, unfiltered emotion that had fueled his practice for months, the truth of his journey. He began to play. The opening notes of his composition, once dismissed as simplistic, now resonated with a haunting clarity, a delicate yet powerful invitation. It wasn't a show of technical acrobatics or flashy displays. It was a journey, a narrative told through sound. The melody flowed, weaving through intricate harmonies that spoke of struggle, of solitude, of quiet perseverance. His fingers, once clumsy and uncertain, now moved with an intuitive grace, each note imbued with a profound sense of purpose, a piece of his soul laid bare. The audience, initially murmuring softly, a few polite coughs echoing in the hall, began to fall silent. A woman in the third row slowly leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Leo, her hand unconsciously reaching for her companion's arm. A man beside her unconsciously stopped stirring his coffee, his spoon suspended in midair. The music wasn't just being heard, it was being felt. It spoke of universal human experiences, the sting of rejection, the quiet courage to continue, the profound beauty found in vulnerability and resilience. It was a story without words, yet deeply understood. Maestro Thorne's expression slowly, almost imperceptibly shifted. The faint smirk vanished, replaced first by a flicker of surprise, then intrigue, then a profound, almost bewildered concentration. His posture, initially relaxed and dismissive, stiffened. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowed, listening intently, his analytical mind trying to dissect what he was hearing. He recognized the piece, or at least its core melody, but it was utterly transformed, elevated. The amateurish composition he had so casually dismissed now possessed a depth, an authenticity, and an emotional resonance that transcended mere technical brilliance. It had soul, a raw, undeniable power that he, the great maestro, had completely overlooked. As Leo reached the crescendo, a powerful, soaring melody that seemed to encapsulate all his past pain and his present triumph, the entire room was utterly, breathtakingly still. No coughs, no whispers, no rustling of programs. Not a single sound dared to break the spell. Everyone was frozen, captivated by the raw, unfiltered emotion pouring from the piano, from Leo's very being. It was as if the music had wrapped itself around their hearts, holding them in a collective, breathless embrace. Thorne's face was unreadable, a complex mixture of awe, grudging respect, and perhaps a hint of profound regret for his past cruelty. He was mesmerized, his own world-class technique momentarily forgotten in the face of such pure, unadulterated artistry. The final note hung in the air, a delicate echo shimmering with unresolved emotion, before slowly fading into absolute, profound silence. For a long, suspended moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The silence itself was a testament to the music's power. Then, a single person in the back row, A woman with tears silently streaming down her face began to clap, slowly, deliberately. The sound rippled through the theater, growing, gathering momentum until it erupted into a thunderous standing ovation. People rose to their feet, their faces alight with emotion, some wiping away tears, others simply beaming with admiration. Leo looked up, his chest heaving, not from exertion, but from the profound release of having poured his entire being into the music. He saw the genuine admiration in the audience's eyes, the raw emotion on their faces. He glanced at Maestro Thorn, who for the first time met his gaze without a trace of arrogance or disdain. Thorn's eyes, usually so sharp and critical, held a newfound respect. He offered a slow, deliberate nod of acknowledgement, a silent admission of his error, a rare and profound gesture from such a man. In that moment, Leo didn't feel a sense of triumph over Thorn or a need for external validation. Instead, he felt a deep, quiet validation from within. He had played his truth, shared his story, and it had resonated. The famous pianist had mocked him, but Leo's music had spoken for itself, silencing not just the room, but the doubts that had once plagued his own heart. His journey, marked by humiliation and solitude, had just truly begun, transformed into a powerful testament to the enduring spirit of art and the quiet strength of the human soul. The city, with its myriad lights twinkling in the night, now seemed to celebrate not just the grand performances, but the profound, unforgettable melody of a quiet triumph.